What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Sober Fix podcast channel. If you're new to this channel, welcome. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, share. We got Robert Pardon on. He's got almost 40 years of sobriety. I'm at 5.5 years. And we cover all different questions, comments, and various topics of recovery. And we're kicking addiction's ass one day at a time. Thank you for the support. Thank you for your time. Let's get into the episode. All right, guys, we are back. Another episode. Who's ready? I've got the coffee going. I was just telling Robert, I had just finished reffing some soccer games. So I got water, Gatorade, and coffee, and we are ready to do this. Robert has been busy. By the way, guys, Robert Pardon, recovery guy, becoming well now. You might recognize him. He's come on and done a bunch of episodes with us, and I love it, and it's good stuff. And he's got years and years of sobriety, knowledge, experience, and he helps a lot of people. So I'm always just super grateful to have him on. He's a good friend of mine. Robert, what's going on, man? Why don't you tell the people what you told me, how busy you are out there right now?
Well, outside of almost missing my flight, which was an adventure, all the planets had to align for me to get from Orlando, Florida, to Salt Lake City, and in great alcoholic uh, 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 what would be the word in great alcoholic. I was late, and so, but I was there early enough. All the planets aligned for me, just like my sobriety. I've made a lot of mistakes along the way, but my planets have always aligned for me to stay sober. And so I finally got on the ground, and I in Salt Lake, and I got in my car and I immediately had lunch with the sponsee. I had a little bit of breather in between. Then I spoke Friday night. Then I got up Saturday morning, had breakfast with a friend. And then I spoke again at an Al Anon conference of all places. And then when I got that done, I dropped off a friend. Then I went and had dinner with some other people. Then I got up and had breakfast with a friend this morning. Then I went to another meeting this afternoon. Then I had time to take a nap. And then now, after we get done here, I'm going to go to a meeting to see a friend in Salt Lake area, take a 2-year chip. So I can't wait to get home so I can rest.
Yeah. Yeah, you are busy, and I've heard you speak in person, and I was blown away. I remember the first time, and just like, man, do you ever get nervous for that stuff today, or are you so used to it? How is that go for you?
You know, that's a great question. Part of me does. Um, Part of me doesn't, because I know my material. I'm a student of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've been sober 39 years, 4 months, and 27 days, a long time. So you gain a lot of knowledge, but the thing is, you never know who you're speaking with. And Drew, as you gain experience and time in recovery, you always want to be relevant to the newcomer. You always want to be speaking to the person who's brand new or relatively new. And there's a lot of pressure, because the longer we're sober, the more we have to stay in touch. But the longer we're sober, the further we get away from when we first came in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
And so yesterday, I had the great opportunity and blessing to speak for a group of Al-Anon, which I'd never done. I I've learned a lot about Al-Anon. Of course, Susie, and in our Both Sides podcast, and Susie has done a lot of episodes with me and as an Al-Anon, but I've never spoken at an Al-Anon conference. And so this yesterday was a great opportunity to meet before a room full of Al-Anons and share my story. But again, it's you want to bring people along with you. You want to speak um, uh, to them. You don't want to speak at them, and you want to have a point where they know that you know. Does that make sense? That you can feel their pain, you know where they're coming from. And as an alcoholic speaking to an Al-Anon, there's a little different finesse, and you want to bring them along with you as you tell your story, that is maybe of the person that they've been living with. Al-Anon is the partner to AA. you know those in Alcoholics Anonymous were in love with alcohol. In Al-Anon, they're in love with an alcoholic, and so it's a totally different dynamic. But the two sides, instead of collide, they meet cohesively, and there's a lot of pressure. Again, once again, just like the newcomer, you want to make sure you're speaking with them, not at them. So yes, I do get nervous. You know what, Drew? I get nervous. I get nervous when you and I speak. Although we're great friends, I get nervous because I want to sound inviting. I want to sound just like you. I want to sound like a person who is inviting someone to join us as we pursue this road of happy destiny, which is recovery.
Yeah. And yeah, I feel the same thing. And I think it's, I think it kind of boils down to we care. We want people, we want to be able to reach people. And just to anyone listening, when we do all this stuff, we're trying to reach out to you guys and say, hey, look, we're with you. This isn't like, hey, we've been sober for years and this is how you got to do it. It's like, no, like we're still doing it. We're still trying to remain free. And although it's been years and a lot of years for Robert, we're still in the trenches every day.
Yeah.
We're still trying to figure out how to be content and how to be free in sobriety and how to kind of reach other people. I think when you struggled for so long and then you finally get sober and you realize that it's actually possible to get free from all the alcoholism and addiction and actually treat it with something that works, you just want people to know. It's
Yeah.
like, hey, look, I got to tell you guys something. I thought for so many years it could never get better, and it did. And yeah, that's interesting. Thank you for bringing that up, Robert. And what I got one more question for you though regarding that. What is the response like from Al-Anons listening to, a sober member that's been sober for a lot of years who's an alcoholic himself? What was the response like from those that had loved ones that were out there?
That was my concern. And I even messaged Amy who invited me to come and speak. And and obviously I want to make sure that I uh that people resonated with me, that I had an impact. And in me, there was people were coming up to me after the meeting and saying, I'm so glad you recovered. That gives me hope for my son, for my husband, for my significant other, for my friend. And so I cast the net of hope across the room. And that's what I wanted to do. So often, it says in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. And you and I and Whitney and others like us, we don't beg a person because we need you to be us. We beg you because we don't want you to go through what we know you're going to go through if you don't recover, if you don't get well, if you don't begin to incorporate the 12 steps into your life. We know what's going to happen to you because it's happened to us. And 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 we want to prevent that. You have an insatiable appetite. I see you're so active in your social media and on this podcast, and I congratulate you for that because it's a lot of work. But you do it not so you'll stay sober, but you do as a result. You do it just to reach that one person. If they don't have to experience the disappointment with your family and jobs and all the things, all the people and the places and the things that you've disappointed, that we've disappointed along the way, if we can prevent that disappointment from occurring into another person, it's a job well done.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And I see it too in some of the comments that I get where people are kind of listening to some of our stories, some of your story, Whitney's story, my story. And it does kind of start to give them some hope because they kind of, I think what happens first is they listen to what we're talking about. And then they kind of see, okay, does this relate to the loved one of mine that's
Yeah.
struggling with addiction or alcoholism? And then they realize, wow, there's some similar stuff here, and they've experienced some similar things, and this person's gotten sober. Maybe they can. Maybe there's and it kind of just that little spark of hope, which I think people need a lot of times when they have someone in their life that's struggling with addiction because it gets dark. I feel like sometimes we don't know who to talk to and maybe we don't have support yet. And people go online and they watch some of these podcasts and
Well,
and and I go ahead.
you bring up you said something really profound, and that's hope. what you and I and others like us recover from is a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. And it says in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous that we were just once as hopeless as Bill. And there's nothing worse than wanting something so badly, but you are hopeless. Remember when you were hopeless, no matter what you did, nothing was going to change. No matter who you were, where you went, who you were with, what you did, we were living in this hopeless state that no matter what we did, nothing was going to change. We were destined to a darkness in our life, no matter how much we wanted to not disappoint, because we've disappointed some wonderful people who really invested in our life. And no matter how hard we tried, no matter how hard we wanted it, we were disappointment after disappointment, and we almost give up on hope. And then something happens, something magical, something that I can't quite figure it out, even after almost 40 years. Something happens to us and the light goes on, and we step from hopelessness into hope. And once we do that, bro, once we get a taste of hope, man, I just want more and more. I want to be hopeful. And you talk about every single day we're reaching out, we're trying to become a better version of who we were yesterday, because we know that we benefit from it, but so does the next person. When they can see us filled with hope, that gives them hope. Well, maybe if Drew did it, maybe if Robert did it, remember in the rooms we would see people and we'd say, man, if I could just believe like they believe, I'll be okay. And then one day we believe that way, we feel that way, and we want so badly to share that hope with the next person who is just once as hopeless as we were.
Yeah, and you put that really well. As you're talking about that, I'm almost picturing myself when I was like that, and I remember situations kind of presenting themselves, like you mentioned, where people were trying to help me. They gave me
Yeah,
real, honest talks, sit downs. I mean, just nudges towards positive stuff. Just opened doors for me to try and get well, but I remember how it felt even as I went to rehab the first couple times, and I knew that there was a problem, but I felt like there was nothing I could do to ever change it. So
yeah,
I kind of just showed up to the rehab, but in the back of my head I'm thinking, man, I don't think anything's ever going to work. And that's what I was thinking about as you were talking about
yeah,
the hopeless. And I like that you mentioned kind of once we get a piece of it, and we realize, man, there's a better way to live, we just want more out of it. We just do. We're like, man, this is so much better than I thought it ever could be, and we just start to chase it. Robert, I want to get into one of these comments here. It was actually it's from J Dub a few days ago. It says, I was absent from my kid's life for nearly 10 years. I thank my higher power that they still love me. Getting to re-know them is the most beautiful feeling. I have 100 days right now. What do you think of that?
wow. First of all, congratulations to J Dub, because 100 days is like in a row is just amazing. And and as much as I congratulate him, as being that sober person he's always wanted to be, someone that could be relied on, I want him to have as little expectation, um, in the children, and always look to his sobriety first, because anything you and I get is a result that we're sober. And we have to view things through the lens of sobriety, not for how our sobriety is received. Because there'll come a point, and maybe it will be for him with his children, maybe it will be for other relationships, but there might be a point where that's all you're going to get, and that needs to be okay with you. um, and and if it is okay, you can stay sober one day at a time for the rest of your life. If at some point you have an expectation that isn't met, it will lead to frustration, or frustration will lead to pain, and pain will lead to medication. And for you and I, medication is drinking, is using, is doing things that we wouldn't normally do. So, so congratulations on 100 days. I remember 100 days. You remember 100 days. It's like, I always kid people. They say, I've been sober 90 days. And I say, in a row? And they said, yeah, a row, and it's like, wow, I had a friend the other day, and I'll share this real quick. Um, they were, they were just celebrating their 37th birthday, belly button birthday. And I said, that's a big deal. They said, yeah, it is. It's kind of a big deal. I said, let me ask you a question. When was the last time you were sober on your birthday? And they said, I think it was 18 years old. So
Wow.
for 19 years, 18 years, that person had been drunk every birthday. And now 18 years later, they're finally sober. And they're sober, I think, 120 days, 130 days in their sobriety now, but it's the first time they've been sober on their birthday in 18 years. That is a miracle. And matter of fact, JW, you can actually in many ways be more effective than Drew or I can be effective, because newcomers, they can't see Drew's 7 years of sobriety. They can't see the time that I have, but they can see you. You're realistic. You're real to them. And so I want to encourage you to go to meetings. I want to encourage you to share your experience that you have come to find along your 100-day journey.
Yeah, Robert, you said a lot of really good stuff. I want to touch first on the expectations. As you were talking about that, I remember I would get sober. I'd cause destruction for 5 years
Yeah.
straight, and then I'd get sober for, I don't know, 30 days, and I wanted like everyone to trust me quickly. I
Yeah.
wanted like everything back really quick. And what I would do is I would set these unrealistic expectations on other people, and I'd get disappointed. And what would happen is things I didn't quite get things back on track fast enough. And then I'd end up, like you said, I'd get discouraged, I'd get frustrated, I'd get down on myself. The regret would start to flow in, and I'd medicate myself. And like you mentioned, us medicating ourselves is it's never good, and it could
Yeah.
be death. And so I
Yeah.
really like that you talked about the expectations. I'll just say one more thing to Jada, man. I made a video about this comment this week, but I just want to say congratulations, man. And I kind of want to piggyback on what Robert said. The 100 days, it's a big deal. It really is. I remember getting to 100 days, and I couldn't believe it. I
Yeah.
could not believe it. It had been so many years. I had never got to 100 days. And I remember just thinking, I just started to feel better, and I started to see some kind of light at the end of the tunnel. I do want to say this though, J-Dub, just keep going, man. Keep going. Do not get too overconfident. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And you're gonna do this, man, and use the relationship with the kids as kind of continued motivation to just continue on and to do well. And I'll also say this, just spread the word. Spread the
Yeah.
word. Because if you can make it to 100 days, that's going to give people hope. And kind of like Robert already said, when we have years and we're telling people, yeah, man, we got years sober, you can do it. And they're like, years? What are you talking about? But then someone like J Dub comes in and has 100 days, and they, okay, I can listen to that guy. I can listen to the guy that, because he understands what it was like out there. These other guys don't. But
You
that's
know,
funny, man.
you bring up something. So I'm so excited that my friend Lisa and I get to go watch a guy take his 2-year chip tonight. And to some people, they would say, "You've been sober so long. What is attractive about a person who's sober 2 years?" I want to know what that person has been doing. Maybe they can say something to me that will add to my 39 years. Maybe there's something I can learn from a person who's celebrating, who's excited about 2 years. Maybe they've got an approach to the 12 steps of recovery that I can glean from. So, Winston Churchill in 1952, Winston Churchill was the leader of Great Britain and brought him out of World War II. He says, everyone wants to learn, but no one wants to be taught. Interesting perspective. And you know, he probably drank a lot, but as much as I know, he said it from a non-alcoholic perspective. But everyone wants to learn, but no one wants to be taught. So I want to stay teachable. I want to be in a position of being teachable. So when the J Dubs come along, I can learn from them, because not only can that add to my quality of sobriety, but it can help me reach back to the person who is 100 days, who's 50 days. And maybe I can relate to them just a little bit more by what J Dub is doing today. And that's a win-win for everyone.
Yeah, I totally agree. I got another one here. It's from this was a few days ago as well. It's from Kaiser. This was on YouTube. It says, I know it gets better someday. My relapses always come out of frustration about life, I guess. I was angry about stuff and decided to open the bottle again. If I do that, I am in the cycle very fast. With this channel's help, I do my best to get on the sober side again. It's just too exhausting to drink, especially if you drink to feel normal. There's a lot in there, but what do you think, Robert?
Yeah.
What's your first impression?
You know, there is no normal outside of sobriety. We can stop feeling. Father Martin says something very interesting. Alcohol puts us asleep that which makes us feel uncomfortable. And when I relapsed at 71 days, I was holed up in a hotel room in Las Vegas, and I was looking to recapture that feeling of what I call a being an almost. And that feeling of being an almost escaped me. I could no longer feel quote unquote normal ever again. And the only place for me to go back was to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I would suggest that every one of the listeners, that you and I have a sponsor to this day. I go to meetings to this day. I work with others to this day. I uh, I I work with the other alcoholic to this day. So the things that you and I are doing today are the things that we would tell anyone who's new to sobriety, because once again, it's not that we're not telling you what to do. We're telling you what we have done. It says in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, if you want what we have and are willing to go to any lengths to get it, then you're ready to take certain steps. So you have to want the freedom that Drew and I have. If you want the freedom that Drew and I have, then you are ready to take certain steps. If you want what we have, and of course you're willing to go to any lengths to get it, then you're ready to take certain. If you're not ready to take certain steps, don't expect to get what I've got. Don't expect to get what Drew has. Don't expect any life but going in and out and in and out and in and out. And one day you won't come back in because you'll be dead.
Yeah, and that's what's so scary about it. When I
Yeah.
look back now and I think about a lot of the times when I was in and out, and I remember actually thinking, and it was kind of the same thing that you were talking about. I was always trying to make it back to that first kind of year of drinking, the
Yeah.
first year
To
of
recapture.
getting high. Yeah, I was trying to recapture the great Friday night where I tried cocaine for the first time and drank black velvet whiskey and danced my ass off, and I suck at dancing, and I just it's just the stars aligned and the world was great, and honestly, it was good that one night, and it for me it just went bad south, and I kind of want to touch on this. First, I want to say, Kaiser, thank you. I've seen a lot of your comments on here, and I just want to say I appreciate it. I appreciate the transparency and kind of everything that just kind of hearing about your story. I do want to add one thing. It says my relapses always came out of frustration about life, and that was the same for me, but the thing was when I had no recovery, I was always going to get frustrated with life. It just always seemed to happen. I had this weird kind of the book talks about restless, irritable, and discontent. That's what I had, and the thing is it wasn't always so obvious. For me, it kind of sometimes flew under the radar and was like it felt like it was just under my skin to where I couldn't really put a finger on it. I just knew that I didn't quite feel right, and then I would get frustrated with life like you talked about. And my solution to everything was to drink over it. Like the quote that Robert talked about it, alcohol fixing the things that make us uncomfortable. And until I had recovery and staying sober as number one, I was always going to run into a level of frustration that brought me back to a drink. I was it was just always going to happen. So Kaiser, man, I just want to say thank you for the comment. Thank you for reaching out. Thank you for watching. And I hope that you can turn it around this time, man. Because if there's anything I could say, it just never gets better. Once we get to a certain point, it just never gets better. There's no combination of anything that we can, no amount of money, no relationship, no job, nothing that will ever make people like us drink normally. That's what I've found. At least that's been my experience. Let me see here, Robert. It says, oh, I think this might be kind of like a normal drinker, but he said, this was Ben on YouTube. He said, I had to stop drinking. I came back to drink, and I am content now with just one or two drinks. I only drink on rare occasions. So he was successful at cutting it down, but it sounds like to me he might be more of a normal drinker. What do you think, Robert?
You know, I you know, I'm glad that this person listens to your podcast because alcohol is not the enemy. Alcoholism, that's the enemy. That's the challenge. And if you can turn around, the big book says, if you can turn around and learn how to drink like a gentleman, our hats are off to you. You know, we have tried thousands of times to do that. And if you found a way to get that done, hey, I got no problem with alcohol. I was a sober bartender and I got sober in Las Vegas and I was always serving alcohol. My wife drinks. I don't have a problem with alcohol. I tell people if I could show up where I was supposed to tomorrow, I would probably drink tonight. But but I
Yeah.
I might on my way to Orlando, Florida tomorrow, I might end up in Pittsburgh,
If you're lucky.
4 days later in a hotel, wondering how I got there and my credit card's maxed out. I don't know what'll happen. I know that I can no longer drink. I and you and others like us were powerless over alcohol that our life had become unmanageable. And not everyone is powerless over alcohol. Some people can put down the alcohol after one or two drinks. I would say to anyone, it says that if you don't think you're an alcoholic, only you can diagnose yourself. Try some controlled drinking. And if you can't control your drinking, then you're alcoholic, a real alcoholic. If you can't control your drinking, hey, my hat's off to you. Go drink. Go have one for us. Because we can.
Yeah. Someone's got to enjoy the alcohol in this world.
Oh,
It,
you know, I tell you,
it's yeah. Go ahead.
it's so funny. The insanity of our addiction is so crazy. When I look back at the things, I remember I was thinking about it the other day. I remember I was partying with the UNLV football team and I was really drunk at a kegger in Las Vegas. And I remember falling, we had a big bonfire and I fell into the fire and burnt my hands severely. And
Oh
so
no.
instead of going to the hospital, I stuck my hands into a bed of ice in a pickup truck and waited for them to cool down so I could drink again. Normal people don't do that. Normal people say, I got so drunk, I fell in the fire, I'm never going to drink again. I was drunk I got more drunk that night.
They said, get in the car, dude. We got to take you to the hospital. He said, hell no, just give me some ice and another beer.
Okay. Oh gosh, it's so funny. And
It
it's
is.
good that we can laugh. It says in the big book, it says outsiders are often amazed that we burst into merriment over a seemingly tragic situation. But why shouldn't we laugh? For we have recovered and been given the power to help others. Laughter makes for usefulness. You and I, and others like us, we did some crazy crap out there. And yet we're living long enough in our recovery to just have a great laugh about it. It says we don't regret the past, nor do we wish to shut the door on it. I want to laugh. It's better than crying over those things. Now, tragic things that happen as we walk out on children, we disappoint. We don't laugh and joke about those things because those are serious things where we hurt some very good people. But all the other stuff is open for laughter.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's things that just hurt for a lot of years, and then there's other stuff where I look back and I just go, "Wow, man!" And it's crazy.
I tell people this. I don't know how long I was married to my second wife.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And just and the funny thing about it was, I remember my address, 1425 North Mallard in Las Vegas, but I don't know how long we were married. Somewhere between 2 and 5 years. Matter of fact, I was remarried to Laura. Laura and I've been married over 36 years now. And Laura and I were married. We already had at least one child. I think we had one child be uh, with us. And I got somehow Kathy got my mom's phone number, and I was over there dropping off the kids, and I answered the phone, and Kathy said, I'm trying to file for Social Security or whatever she was doing. Did you ever file for divorce? She's asking me this, and I'm married to Laura like 4 years. We have a child together. I'm thinking, God, I hope so. Oh man, it's crazy. And and I had to really look for things that showed how unmanageable my life became. And only insane people would do what you and I have done and then justify it so we could do it again.
Yeah, and when you were talking about, I mean, I could relate to all that, but especially when you're talking about kind of alcohol not being the enemy, it's funny because when I talk to people just in normal, not in recovery type spaces, but just in regular normal life, and then they find out for whatever reason that I'm sober, it's funny because sometimes, I mean, most people say congratulations, that's pretty typical, or other times they'll kind of say like, oh, well, I don't like drink as much anymore, or I don't go that hard. And I'm like, guys, I don't have anything against alcohol. I
Yeah.
have something against me drinking alcohol. So
Yeah.
I'm really glad that you brought that up, Robert. And yeah, it's interesting because I look back on some stuff and just kind of some of the chaos but I laugh about it today because it's just not like that anymore. And some of the stuff looking back, I think what you said where you were like, man, we're either laughing about it or crying about it. And there was so much stuff that held me down for so many years that I think being able to laugh about it today I think that's part of the kind of the freedom is just like, man, it was crazy back then, but it's so much better now, if that makes sense. I want to go to this comment, Robert. It says, there is always another rock bottom to hit if you continue drinking after your first one. And then they said, I guess I have hit almost 3. What do you think about that, Robert?
You know, welcome back. First of all, at some point, we don't come back. At some point, we are a casualty to a treatable condition. And there's nothing worse than a cancer patient dying when all they had to do was take chemotherapy or radiation. And we know that alcoholism and drug addiction is a treatable condition. There's far too many sober people to think that it's not treatable. I mean, some people, Drew, our stories pale in comparison to theirs, and yet they're well. They have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. And for whatever reason, you and I came in, we relapsed, but we came back in and we stayed. Do you ever wonder why you don't see people back in the rooms anymore? Um, it's because they've died or they're on their way to dying. And so at some point, we have to say enough is enough. And no matter how painful, and recovery can be painful, because we have to admit things that we've never admitted to before. We have to surrender in ways we've never surrendered before. We have to trust a higher power we can't see. And then we need to look at our life totally and take that fearless and moral inventory. Then we have to admit it to another person and to God, to ourselves. And then we have to go and say we're sorry to people we've harmed. And then when we get all done with that, we get to continue to take a personal inventory. And when we're wrong, we promptly admit it. And so there's a lot of things that would seem difficult, but nothing is more difficult than dying from a disease, from a condition that is treatable.
Yeah, and when you were talking about people kind of leaving and you wonder when they're coming back, it's such a sad thing. I've seen so many people that were doing really well, and you kind of you see them go out, and initially I'm always hoping, oh man, I hope they're an exception to the rule, and they go back out, but they figure out a way to just survive and do okay, and it rarely pans out like that, and I think we've touched on this before, but I've never seen anyone that had alcoholism like we do, to the point where they had to really work hard to stay sober, and then they end up relapsing and it just ends well. I just haven't seen that. It's normally they come back and it's really bad, and it's a sad thing. So I hope that I hope that that person that's hit a few of those rock bottoms, I hope that they're able to turn around, and I hope that they realize something that took me a long time to realize was it can always get worse. It can always get worse is what I found. And just when I thought, yeah, go ahead.
That's scary. And I want to invite people, because there's nothing more freeing. There's nothing that feels better than realizing you're home. That degree of comfortability, um, that you're home. You don't have to go in. Remember that feeling, and you and I discussed it with Whitney before, that feeling when you walked one day into the rooms of recovery and you realized you never had to go anywhere to get everything you ever wanted in life. You were okay right there with that group of people, involved in that plan of recovery. You were okay right where you're at, without drugs or alcohol. And we would go to the trap house, the our friend, our so-called friend who would cook and meth down, or go talk to our favorite bartender, or engage in a relationship that was going nowhere. And we always left feeling incomplete. We went there to feel complete, but we left there feeling incomplete, because if we were complete, we wouldn't have to do the same thing the next day. And we walk into the rooms of recovery one day, for those of us who have long-term sobriety, as we do, we walk in there one day, we realize I don't have to go anywhere else ever again. We're like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. She could have gone home anytime she wanted. She just had to click her heels 3 times and say, there's no place like home. There's no place like home. And next thing you know, she's home. And Wizard of Oz is an incredible movie. In the end, she says, if I'm ever looking for happiness, I never have to look any further than my own backyard. And that's what happened to you and me and others like us. We get to a certain place and the fellowship so overwhelms us that you're my people now. I never have to go anywhere, because we could go to family events, we could go to birthday parties, we could be with our significant other, we could be with our children, and we never felt quite comfortable. That's why we had to get drunk. That's why we had to get high. That's why we had to get sideways just to enter into that space. And then finally we walk into the rooms of recovery, and the people there, even though I don't know them, they're my people. And I never have to go anywhere else again, uh, to achieve everything I've ever wanted. And there's no feeling like that in the world. I don't leave the room feeling empty. I leave the room feeling with hope, that finally people understand my pain, my suffering, and they know how to get well.
Yeah, and I remember too when I was out there. I remember the kind of the beginning days, and there was days where I'd be drinking in the very beginning or getting high, and I would feel kind of complete in the very beginning. But then
Yeah,
I remember fast forward, like you were talking about, it didn't matter how much I drank. It didn't matter how many things I mixed, different substances. I just could never quite feel complete towards the end. There was just always
yeah,
something missing. And also, like you talked about, no matter what I was doing, I was never really present. I was always kind of looking to, oh, when am I going to get away from people and I can go drink as like I want to, or I can go get high. And it was such a relief when I did find that feeling that you were talking about, where you just kind of realize, oh, okay, I'm doing, I'm where I'm supposed to be right now. And
yeah,
I remember too, in kind of early sobriety, I would have these moments. It was so hard. I was kind of, my emotions were all over the place, and I was stressed out and I was frustrated. But I would have these little moments where I just kind of realized that I was on the right path. I could just, it was weird. I didn't know how to explain it, but I just felt kind of centered for these brief moments, and I'm like, man, this stuff, it's hard to stay sober, but you know what, I'm on the right path. Like what I'm doing right now is it's working for me. And so that's what I thought of as you were talking about that, Robert. I
yeah.
want to get into this next one. This is from Benjamin a couple days ago on YouTube. He says, I got 2 years. It is possible. Talk to God about it. I'll start this one. Benjamin, I just want to say congratulations, man. 2 years. It's like Robert's going to see his friend take a 2 year chip. I remember when I got to 2 years. The first 1 year was what I was always trying to get to. Like that for some reason, I don't know why, but all the times I was in and out of 12-step stuff, or I was in and out of rehab. I remember I just had this fantasy in my head. I hope one day I can get to 1 year. I don't know. I used to be sitting in meetings and I'd see people at a year kind of sharing their story. And I wanted to get it so bad. And I remember getting that first year, and it was such an accomplishment. And my life had changed a lot, especially in the way that I felt kind of internally. And then I remember getting to the second year. And the second year was, the first year was kind of clearing my head. I was kind of just, whoa, what's going on? Clearing the fog. But the second year, things really started to take off. I started to kind of understand my higher power relationship started to expand. By the time I got to 2 years, my support system, was my foundation in recovery, was a lot stronger than it was at 1 year. And I really started to feel better kind of mentally and emotionally. My emotions started to balance out a little bit, and it just felt really good. And what it did was it gave me motivation to just continue on. Robert, what do you have to say to Benjamin with 2 years?
Benjamin said something so foundational yet necessary. He mentioned his higher power, and and we must find a power greater than ourselves, who can do for us what we cannot do for ourselves. And that's the difficult news. The good news is that power can be anything we want it to be. I've had sponsees who, one of my sponsees, his higher power is Gaius, which is a female Greek goddess. And I don't know anything about her. I don't believe in her. Yet this person has 3 years sobriety, and he's happy, he's joyous, and he's free. I have other sponsees who are very Catholic. They trust the Pope, they trust their local priest at their parish, and they're happy, joyous, and free. I have another friend who's since passed away in long-term sobriety, and he was Lucky Jim. And I've shared this with you before. He said the tide goes in and the tide goes out, and I don't get drunk in between. And and his higher power was the moon and the tide. The moon controls the tide, and the tide can't be stopped. So the bad news is we must find a higher power. The good news is that power can be anything that makes us feel better about who we are. Um, and in the beginning, Drew, um, my higher power was the group. I went to a lot of meetings, and it wasn't an individual in the group, but it was something miraculous that was occurring to these men and women in the rooms. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but I knew they were tapped into something or someone who could, because they sounded like me when they shared their stories, but they had jobs. They weren't wanted by the local sheriff. They had a license. They had a license to legally drive, and they didn't have to look out their window at 3 a.m. to see if their car was being repossessed. Oh gosh, remember those days? Man, they didn't have to put tinfoil on the windows because they're always looking. That I call them the black helicopter people. Remember those days? We get so high and so paranoid. We know they were watching. We knew they were
Yeah.
listening. Oh God. And 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 I knew they knew where I was coming from because those are the stories that they told, which I could totally relate to. And yet when they told about how they were today, they sounded just like Benjamin, who is happy, joyous, and free. And what's great is that, Benjamin, your higher power can possibly change and evolve over the coming years into a different meaning or a deeper sense of who your higher power is today. So congratulations on 2 years. Keep going and never underestimate the influence that you have over the newcomer who's coming in the rooms today.
Yeah, I think that's such amazing advice, and I'm sitting there laughing as you're talking about the helicopter. Man, I remember one night I ran onto a toll road. First of all, I was hearing like sirens, and I ran out of this apartment and I ran onto this toll road, and I was seeing like helicopters driving around and people dropping down and like they were throwing ladders out of the helicopter and dropping down and they had these. Oh yeah, it was bad. And anyway, long story short, I woke up after running like 5 miles and I remember
Yeah.
having to walk back feeling all sick. And it's crazy because I remember the specific day now that you made me think about it, Robert. And I remember trying to. I told myself I was. That's it. I'm not using after that. It was the morning after when I had to kind of walk home and stuff. And I think I literally made it hours before I had a drink in hand. So and I think that's why I love doing this so much is because if there's anyone out there that has or maybe is even right now experiencing that crazy stuff, man, it's like there's such a better way to live in recovery. Like we could get away from all of that, all of the chaos, and start to live a productive life. I want to get into this comment, Robert. It says this is from the Bronx Spartan, and he's had a lot of cool comments lately, and I appreciate it if you're listening, Bronx Spartan. But it says, I couldn't get sober while my mother was dying. I'm sober now after the fact. I still talk to her to show her, but it still hurts or stings, it says. What do you think about that, Robert?
You know, some pain never goes away, but that doesn't mean we can't remain sober through it. And I don't know how long uh, this person has been clean and sober, clean and or sober, but I do know that time is our greatest friend. And sometimes we feel bad because a person has passed on and we can't get the closure we need, and we have a sense of guilt that we want it to be a better son, a better end. But time is our greatest friend, and all they ever wanted for us, all my mom, all my dad, all the loved ones who have passed on, all they wanted to be or wanted to see was me being sober and clean. And so if you want to honor that memory and be the person that they always knew you could be, just stay clean and sober and allow time to do what time does. Because time has a way of making things make sense. And that's where, you know what? It brings me back to our earlier conversation. We beg of you to be fearless and thorough. So maybe this person, maybe we can make a difference in the life of someone. I've heard your story enough where I know what a disappointment you were to your mom and dad. And if you can help someone else who haven't disappointed to the degree that you disappointed your mom and dad, then you've done your job. That's why we beg of them to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Again, it doesn't help us stay sober, even though we tried to carry the message in step 12, but it helps them achieve what they wouldn't have achieved without our input. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense, and that's really what helped me feel better. There was a lot of stuff that I remember when I would try and get sober, but I had so many things that I felt kind of guilty over, kind of in relation to this comment. There was just other things that I felt guilty about, and the only thing that really helped me was the time. And what it was too was just living the contrary action, living the time living sober and doing things a little bit better, like treating people
Yeah,
better, just living that sober life, not causing a bunch of wreckage, apologizing where I could. And it kind of reminds me of living amends, where you just, as time goes on and you're just living that better life, you just start to feel a little bit better about the past, is what I found. And
yeah,
slowly but surely, and I love that you mentioned too, Robert, where some things are always kind of gonna hurt
yeah,
a little bit. They
yeah,
just they just are. I found that in my life. There's things that I look back on from addiction. I just go, oh man, like I know my life's changed, and I know I'm living a completely different life, but oh, it just doesn't feel good that happened.
yeah,
But I will say, I'll second that the time has just, it's healed a lot in my life, and it made me feel better about myself, because when I used to look back at all the things I did in addiction, I didn't have any sober time to kind of counteract it. So I just felt bad. I would just look back and I just felt bad. And now that I have some years of living different, I feel like it's balanced out a little bit,
yeah.
if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, and
Robert,
it will
go
more,
ahead.
you know, one of the people I've hurt tremendously was my first wife. And she believed in me. She trusted me. She was always hoping that I would get better. Unfortunately, my addiction would never allow me to be the kind of husband I wanted to be, let alone the kind of husband she needed me to be and wanted me to be as well. And and I harmed her. So I can't go back and undo that. But what I can be is the best version of the sober me I possibly can be. And she wrote me a letter when I was 33 years sober, and commemorating that journey, that 33-year journey. And she wrote me the most kind and thoughtful and forgiving letter I'd ever received from anyone. And it was as if I never harmed her at all. And all she wanted for me was to get and to stay sober. And so one of the reasons that I believe in this so much is because there's some people that we have to accept whatever closure we have for them. And there's other people in our journey that they're our biggest fans. I have a daughter who I harmed when I walked out. And she is one of my biggest fans. She's rooting for me every single day because she's finally, you know, I walked out on her when she was a young girl, and 39 years later, almost 40 years later, she continues to get a part of her dad back, and our relationship just continues to grow. On the same hand, my father died when was 62 in 1988, and the amount of closure I had with him, I had to accept it. But over time, I realized I'm the kind of person who believes in heaven, but I also believe that people look down from heaven and they just see us the way we are, the sober version of what they always wanted for us. And to me, they're smiling, they're saying, way to go, man. I'm happy for you. I'm glad, because they knew our pain. They wish they could change our pain. They wish that they could have made a difference, but our addiction would dictate to us in ways that they couldn't. So congratulations. And just once again, allow time to do what time does. Time has a way of leveling out the playing field.
Yeah, thank you for that, Robert. And I know we're getting towards the end here. I want to bring up I've had a couple comments from Ashley on YouTube, and Ashley, if you're listening, I appreciate all the comments and getting to hear some of your story. She says her husband is an IV meth user and started going into psychosis. He stays on the streets when he's in active use. Let's see. It's kind of a long comment. I'm going to go down to the end. It says he had a fifth relapse after 7 months of sobriety and even getting his chip. So that's cool. He was in AA. I'm not a drug user, and your story helped me better understand the madness. I've also seen the anger, rage, and crazy emotions, and I've seen how hard recovery can be. But I'm told that eventually it gets better. He needs at least a year minimum. I'll say real quick, Ashley, thank you for this. The psychosis stuff is rough. It's really rough. And unfortunately, with meth, it's scary. We lose our minds, and it's hard to differentiate the truth from the false and kind of reality. And I hope that he's able to make it back. So you said fifth relapse. I hope that he's able to make it back. And I want to say this too, Robert. She put in another comment. It was on our episode with it was me, you, and Susie, and it was where Susie, I believe it was you and Susie, were talking about one person has to get well. Like, so if you got two people who are sick, one person has to get well. She commented on that, and she basically said, look, my husband struggles with addiction, and she said that she sought out help and that she believes in that one person has to get well, and she kind of commented on that. So I thought that was pretty cool. Do you have any other comments on what's going on with the husband or anything, Robert?
You know, there's nothing worse than seeing, and we know because we were on the side that hurt people. There's nothing worse than coming to the realization that no matter how good you are, no matter how much you love them, no matter how much you try to make things better, an active addict, alcoholic is going to drink, is going to use. That's what we do in our active pursuit of that disease. And that's why, and I'm glad you mentioned Susie, because Al-Anon is such a great resource. So whether this young lady pursues church or someone, we all need someone who will understand. And that's what you and I found in the rooms of recovery. Uh, we found a group of people that understand, and for her to get well, and it sounds like she's really balanced. It sounds like she is sad for her husband, but she's allowing her husband to experience whatever he has to experience. She sounds very well adjusted, and I want whatever she's doing, I want to encourage her to keep doing that or to reach out to Al-Anon if she's not a part of that, because there is a group of people like Susie who learn how to uh, love an alcoholic, a drug addict, while getting well at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just add to that. I just want to say again, thank you, Ashley. I've seen a few of your comments, and I totally agree with Robert. It sounds like there's something you're doing that's working
Yeah,
because you sound very balanced. I know you said that one of you had to get well, and that you have. It sounds like you have some type of recovery or support system or something. And it also sounds like. I don't know. It seems like you kind of understand addiction a lot. I don't know if it's your experience with what you've gone through with your husband, or I think she also mentioned that she has a family group. Actually, now that I
yeah,
think about it,
good,
I think she does, and it
good for her.
seems like she does. Yeah, it
You know
seems like
what?
she does. It seems,
You
Go
know,
ahead.
the same way that you and I can help the newcomer, Ashley can help the the person who's just coming into Al-Anon or that recovery group, who whose darkness is matched by the darkness of their alcoholic or their drug addict significant other. She can help them understand that you need to let them go and focus on you, because I tell people all the time, when I see a couple come into AA and they say support, and the room applauds. I actually go up to those people. Are you going to get help yourself? Because you're very sick if you stay with this person, and I know what this person has done to you because we've done it to others, right? So you need to go while they're getting well or refusing to get well, you need to get well yourself, because somebody in the family dynamic has to get well to break the cycle. And I'm sorry that Ashley's going through this. There's nothing more painful than watching someone you love. And I know we're getting close to the end. And Drew, something magical my dad said to me that lives in me as if my dad said it yesterday. I remember I'd relapsed after 71 days, and this was April 19th of 1986. And he dropped me off at the motel, and he said to me, he said, "Your mother and I aren't going to watch you die." That was my dad. Your mother and I aren't going to watch you die. He knew for me, if I didn't recover, if I didn't get well, death was the next thing for me. And he wasn't going to watch that. So as difficult as that was for him and for my mom, he was turning his back because he had to go fend for himself. There's nothing worse than watching someone you love destroy themselves. And we have to find a way to cope with it. And the only way we can cope with it is to become self-preservation. And I'm really proud of Ashley that she's taken the steps. She hasn't stopped caring about the person, but she's realized that somebody in the room has to get well. And she can't get well for somebody else, but she can get well for herself. So congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations, Ashley, and I hope that at some point you update us, and he's got a year sober, like you said, he needs a year minimum. I hope that one day that does happen, and I hope you can let us know that. That'd be super cool.
Yeah.
Robert,
And
man, go ahead.
another thing, real quick, if Ashley wants to reach out to you, I can hook her up with Susie, or I can hook her up with Amy, individuals that I know in Al-Anon, and they can provide guidance if she so desires, provide the guidance for her that and support that she would want in her pursuit of becoming well.
Yeah, absolutely, Ashley. If you are ever seeing this, let us know. Reach out. Let us know if you need more support. If you'd like to talk someone that's in a family group, and we'll definitely get you those
Yeah,
contacts. Robert, thank you, man. It's always a pleasure. The time goes by so fast. We can go forever,
too,
but
too quickly.
I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for your time again.
It's been a pleasure, and I always appreciate everything that you're doing, Drew. And I appreciate your sobriety. I appreciate your outreach and your insatiable appetite to see other people get well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Robert.
Yeah.
All right, you made it to the end of the episode. Don't forget to check out the TikTok at The Sober Fix and our Instagram at The Sober Fix Podcast. I try and post little videos, little motivations almost daily, just depends. If you want to come on the show, reach out to me. Send me an email. I'd love to hear your story and cover different areas of recovery, man. This is what it's all about. We share our story, we spread hope, we try and help each other, and we just refuse to lose to addiction. Let's go another week, guys.